Today is February 17th, 2021. My name is Michael Walsh. I am here with Katori Walker and Thelma Jenkins, and I'm conducting a oral history project. I'm lucky to have Thelma and Katori with me today. So could you both state your name, please?
I'm Thelma Jenkins.
And I'm Katori Walker, officially Cynthia Walker, but I go by Katori.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Harlem in New York City.
And who did you grow up with?
I grew up with two extended family members. One was named Mama Stevens, and the other was Rosetta King. And I grew up with them because my mother was very busy trying to make ends meet, my mother and father. He was my stepfather. So they didn't have time for the little baby. And I grew up with those two families, I'd say until the time I was about 8 or 9.
She was really busy doing things like side hustles, like talk about the whiskey.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the reasons why my mother didn't want me around, she used to, in order to survive and have money, she used to make whiskey in the bathtub. And I thought that was exciting. And I decided to tell everybody in the neighborhood, mostly my little friends, I don't have to take a bath on Saturday because my mama makes whiskey in the bathtub.
Moonshine.
Okay.
So therefore, the children repeated what I said. So my mother didn't need me around her when I was very young. Needless to say, I got paddled for that.
And then I grew up in Mount Vernon and Yonkers, and then half the year I stayed in St. Thomas in Puerto Rico. So I have a little Caribbean upbringing because my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother, and a little bit of my dad, but mostly I was raised by women.
Oh, interesting. Cool. Yeah, so how many, or do you have brothers and sisters in your family?
No, we're all only children.
Yeah.
I was an only child. My daughter was an only child. And Cynthia is a no child, only child. So there we go. It runs, I think once we had that one baby, we say no more. Because we all only had one.
Gotcha.
But my great-grandmother had 10 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
My mother.
Wow, it's a big family. So what was your neighborhood like growing up?
Well, in Harlem, it was a quiet neighborhood. We lived in a brownstone, and it was very quiet there at the time that I was living there.
And then for me, just living in Mount Vernon, Yonkers, and again on the island, it was very pleasant and it was very quiet. It was actually very beautiful.
What were some of your favorite places to visit growing up?
Growing up, when I was in Harlem, I loved the museum. It was the Harlem Renaissance at that time. And there were the museums and the schools.
And the clubs.
And the clubs. And it was really a fantastic place to be. I really didn't appreciate what I was living through at the time. I didn't know, I was just living. But it was fantastic. And we did so many things. And there were so many things available. I said with the dance and the music, and Lionel Hampton and Charlie Barnett and Miles Davis. All of those were very people that I went to see in the little clubs. And so I enjoyed it very much. Along with education, that was a very big deal in most families at that time.
And for me, it was education. My family was really strong in education. So even though I would have the summer so-called off, it really wasn't off. I had to study, prepare for my next grade. So there was a lot of studying. You know, even when I was on the island, I would go to school on the island as well. So it was always study, study. Education is very important in our family.
Gotcha. Did you attend a place of worship growing up? Like go to church or anything like that?
Yes, when I was in Harlem, I went to church there, and it was St. Martin. It was an Episcopal church, and I went there. And then 38 years later, when I moved to Yonkers.
Because she's been here for 60 years.
I've been here over 60 years in the same address. And when I first came here, and I was getting accustomed to the house and being a house owner, but eventually I decided to go to the Catholic Church, which I had gone into the Catholic religion by that time.
St. Barnabas.
And I went to St. Barnabas.
Here in Yonkers.
Here in Yonkers. The priests were very kind, and they were very cordial. However, I had a little problem with the people in the pews. Needless to say, my husband and I, we were the only Black ones there at the church. And when we sat down in the pew, there were quite a few people in our line of seating. However, everybody proceeded to get up more or less during the service and move to other seats because they didn't want to sit next to us. It's like maybe our Blackness would rub off on them. I don't know. But at any rate, they were not very nice. So then I went back a second time to a different man, hoping that things would be better. But actually, there was so much hostility with the people there in church. So by the third time, I decided I would give up going to Mass in Yonkers. And not until my daughter and my granddaughter came to live with me that I did go back to church in New Rochelle.
Yeah. And then I went to church. I went to church as a young person, even living here. I did go to church in Mount Vernon, as Nana has said, for me, but I did go to church up here, which is a couple of blocks from the house. And it's a very nice church. They have like all different cultures are there. So it's very nice, very warm, very welcoming, a lot different than the past.
Did you go to any schools in Yonkers, Katori?
No, I did not go to any schools in Yonkers, although we lived next to a school here. I went to Ursuline in New Rochelle. And when I was really young, I went to other schools like in Manhattan or the Bronx, but I went to mostly private schools and Catholic schools. I went to Pace University, though, to get my bachelor's degree here in White Plains and Pleasantville.
Oh, I see. So, Thelma, you mentioned some racial discrimination at the Catholic Church. Did you experience any other racial discrimination growing up, like in Harlem and other places?
Well, in Harlem, Harlem was initially all Black.
Uh-huh.
And so there was no discrimination there, with the exception, I would say, of the stores. They didn't have, at that time, they didn't have any Black people working behind the counter. That was, well, all the stores were owned by whites. And they didn't hire any blacks to tend the cash register or work on customers. They were all white. That's the only discrimination that we did have in Harlem.
Now talk about the discrimination here where that lady thought you were, she has like 2 stories for that.
Okay. Yeah, you could take all day for me to tell you about the discrimination here in Yonkers when I first moved here. Remember, I moved here in 1959, and that's quite some time ago. There were really only 3 of us on the block. That's a square block, only 3 houses. And one was black. That was the owner of all the houses and all the property. The other was an Italian family right across from me. But coming up to get to this house, that's where I got discrimination.
We'll talk about the lady.
Oh, well, the lady in the back, the neighbor, she was on the other street behind me, but she had a tree, and a crab apple tree, and all the crab apples used to fall over. One of the limbs extended over to my side in my yard. So all of the crab apples would fall over on my side. And of course, the bees and the bugs, and at that time they had garden snakes. So, everything out there, it was an infestation of what was falling. So I had been here maybe about 6 months. And I went to her and to ring the bell and let her, thought we could discuss the crab apple. Well, the minute I rang the bell and she answered the door, she opened the door, didn't open. She saw that I was black and she said, "I'm not buying anything." And she slammed the door in my face. So I rang the bell again and she opened the door again very aggressively. And I said, "I'm not selling anything. I'm your neighbor next in the back of you. And I've come over to discuss the crab apples because they're falling in my yard and causing a lot of problems." So I explained to her about the apples. She didn't acknowledge that I even said anything, but she slammed the door.
Okay, so let's tell about the when you were walking home.
Yeah, well, I just want to tell them what happened. So I had my lawyer write her a letter. And then after that, they decided that they would cut the limb down, and we became good friends.
Okay.
Okay.
Tell them about the person that when you were walking up the hill, because
I worked at Lincoln Hospital. I was an administrator there, and of course, you had to live up and look like the title that you were in. So I was pretty well dressed most of the time, all of the time, really. I used to take the train home, the Metro North, and I came home this particular day, and I noticed someone behind me was walking very fast. Needless to say, I was the only black in that train coming home, because blacks were going the other way. They were going home when I was coming home, because no blacks lived up here hardly. So finally, the person behind me, I sort of looked behind me, she was coming up in such a hurry, but I sort of turned my head and I thought it was a woman, so I felt no problem. And she got up to me and she says, "May I speak to you?" I said, "Yes." But then, "What do you want to talk about?" She says, "I would like to know, would you know where I can get me a maid for my house?" She says, "I have housework and I would like to know, do you know of any maids for my house?" I looked at her. I said, "I know it's very difficult now. I'm having problems too. If you happen to know of anybody, you tell me, because I need one too."
Yeah. So, that's a very big insult, so we don't really know if that was intentional to insult or she just was innocently asking, but you're going to run up to a Black person and ask a Black person if they know of a maid is pretty insulting.
Right.
And so then the other one was, and we just want to make it a little shorter because he has the other questions, but I thought it was important that Nana tells you the story about just being, I'll just set it up so then you could say the end part. In Pittsburgh, Nana went to have with a group of family and friends, right?
Yeah.
Went to a restaurant to eat and they had to wait and it was very long service. And then at one point we were at the table while they got their drinks, and you can tell what happened.
So the gentleman, after giving us our drinks, needless to say, waited forever. But he brought the drinks, and while we were waiting for them to set up the table for us to eat dinner and get our order in, and he brought the drinks and banged the tray down on the table. We didn't pay it too much mind, but we did take our drinks and we drank them. And then they called us and told us that our table was ready. So just as we got up to go to the table, I heard this loud crash. And I couldn't imagine. I said, oh my God, the poor man, he's dropped the tray. And then I looked in his direction and I saw him with every glass we drank out of, he was throwing it to the floor. He was banging it, throwing it. Every glass we drank out of, off the table. Needless to say, we just walked right out. We didn't want to eat there anymore. We might spit in the food.
Or worse.
Or worse.
Yeah, so, those are just, Lana has a lot of stories, but I just thought those were, probably of interest. She has a lot more, but we just wanted to give you those. And as far as me growing up here in Yonkers, the racism was, the racism was pretty bad. As a little girl, I would get called the N-word. I would get rocks thrown at me and I would have to run home. I wouldn't at this one particular diner here, they wouldn't serve me like a hot dog and a shake that I used to have with my friends, wanted to have with my friends. They'd serve my other friends that were white and wouldn't serve me anything and told me my money was no good. I think a hot dog was a quarter or something, or 50 cents. So yeah, there was, some racism here that we did experience, both my grandmother and I.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's really too bad. Wow. Did you participate in any civil rights movements or marches?
Well, the one in Pittsburgh, when I went to Pittsburgh, I was ready to deliver, but I wanted
to have a baby.
To have the baby, my daughter, her mother. But I had never seen a Black parade before, and they had it there. So I was excited. But in the meantime, I also have the pains for delivering.
She went to contractions.
Yeah, I went into contractions. I guess with all the excitement. So I stood there and I watched and I waited. But in the meantime, my husband and my friends were not happy with me because I wanted to see the parade. And that was my first parade.
So she didn't get a chance to participate because she was about to have my mama.
Yeah. But anyhow, I saw it and I delivered later.
Right. And then as for me, I didn't have the opportunity to participate in those type of parades. I did participate in the great gay rights parades, because when I was growing up, I had friends that were gay or identified, in different genders. And so as a friend to be supportive of them, I would go down to the village when they had the parades, and I would, and participate with them for their rights.
Oh, that's great. Do you have any memories from the desegregation case in Yonkers? Were you living in Yonkers during that time, and do you have any memories of it?
I remember that they didn't, they were trying to get a certain amount of apartments for minorities, period. and that was a different, and they went through the court so many times at the trying to get cases because you couldn't always live in the area you wanted to. My mother lived in Yonkers at a different area than I
On the
lived.
other side,
On the other
near the
side.
Sawmill River Parkway,
Yeah,
over there where the tower is.
and she lived there. Now, when she bought there, plus there were no blacks in that area, but she had her attorney to represent her, and therefore the neighbors thought that the person who was buying was white. They didn't know the person who was buying was black. So then my mother would put on a little maid's uniform,
Right.
and every time they would come to the door, she would answer the door and say, "Oh, Mr. Cummings is not here now." So they thought that this maid was always the one that's answering the door.
Right. So they thought that the maid was didn't live, that was the maid and not her house. Yeah. And she lived there about 10 years before Nana moved up here.
Yeah, but even prior to that, remember they when they found out that my mother was the owner, they burnt a cross in her yard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she was a fighter, and she wasn't going to have none of that. Plus, their children also were playing on her property, and she would give them lemonade and cookies. So finally, the mothers and fathers had to break down because that's where their children were.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Katar, did you want to add to that, or should I just move on?
Oh yeah, no, I really wasn't. I spent a lot of time in Puerto Rico and St. Thomas during that time.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so here's a question for both of you. What does Black History Month mean to you, and are there any figures in the African American movement that stand out to you?
Well, the Black movement means a lot to me. It reminds me, first of all,
Black History Month.
My Black History Month.
Mhm.
It reminds me of where I came from, what I went through, what I'm living through, and what I can expect.
Right, because she's 100. She'll be 100, and Nana will be 100 in June.
June.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow.
Doesn't she look like she's 60? She looks like
Oh,
she's
come
60.
on. You got problems with your eyes. I'll be 100 in June.
That's amazing.
And I've lived through a lot. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. And there's a lot, still things I want to see now. Every day I say, "Oh, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I've been dying for days and for years, but I'm still here. But I'm not going to be here. You better come see me because I'm not going to be here much longer." So I'm here till
She's
100.
been saying that forever. Yeah. And so with me, it's definitely a time, significant and very powerful time to just remember the leaders and the people that sacrificed their lives for us to be here. And so that's what it means to me, just celebrating the history, celebrating, just being who we are and how far we've come.
Do you participate in any events to celebrate Black History Month?
Yeah. So right now, actually this year in particular, which is going to be this weekend, I just celebrated by participating in a musical celebration of African Americans here in Yonkers. So it's going to be on Saturday, and I did a spoken word performance there. And so I'm excited about that. And usually what we do on that day, we make sure that we buy Black. We want to support vendors, support people. We also, look at movies And we also, what else do we do? We look at movies, we do that. And I mean, when I was younger, of course, we would go out to different events more. But now with COVID-19 and then being older, we haven't been able to do that much, unfortunately.
Right. Oh, can you tell me a little bit more about that event?
Yes, I don't have the information in front of me, but it's a musical event. And it's going to be this Saturday. I don't remember what time because I pre-recorded my video, but it's different people are musicians, I believe, and also people who do spoken word. They put together this Zoom event since it can't be live, and then they're going to broadcast that. So I can send you the information, so maybe you can add to it. But I did spoken word, and I'm using sounding bowls and chimes. I express myself through spoken word and art because I'm an artist as well. So this event really means a lot to me, and I was really honored to be able to be a part of it.
Oh, that's terrific. Thelma, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think Katori does the speaking.
Okay.
I do the criticizing, and she does the talking.
We're a great team. We should have our own talk show.
Well, I tell you, all of a sudden it's difficult for me. She is now the mother and I am the child. And I have a hard time with that. She tells me what to do. I'm used to telling her what to do.
Payback.
That's too funny. Yes, is there anything that you would like to add that I haven't asked about?
Yeah, so I want to just say, so my mom was a very active person here. Her name was Ivory Diane Walker, and she did a lot in the community. She belonged to so many organizations here. And so I just want to acknowledge her because without her, I wouldn't be here. And her and Nana did a lot of things together. Yeah. And she was very active. She belongs, unfortunately, I can't tell you the names of the, Black organizations, but she was a part of a lot of the Black organizations here. Another thing is that, some of the things that I've done and Nana was a part of was the 100 Words of Wisdom project, and also doing a lot of the Yonkers quilt project. So, being a Black member of the community, me and Nana, and of course, Evan Bishop, who's not here right now, we've done a lot for the community, bringing people together through art. And I think that I would like to leave a message to anyone that's listening to this time capsule, so to speak, that to follow your heart, to believe in yourself, and to continue to do things for the community. The community really needs leaders in it. They need people who want to support and to care about the community. There's so many things that you can do for Yonkers and to keep it alive and bustling city where nobody's forgotten, that everybody is counted for. And as a member, I'm chair of the mayor's African American Advisory Board. That's one of the things that we really aim to happen for this city, that the people are involved in getting and doing things for the city and being seen and heard. Nana, she's an elder in the community, so it's important that the seniors and the elders in the community are also seen and heard, and they are not considered that, disappearing. Our history cannot disappear. We need to keep it alive. So I'm glad that, the library is doing this.
And during the time that I've been in Yonkers, I volunteered for 17 years at the Wartburg Nursing Home. That was after I retired. As I say, I'm going on 100. But after I retired, I volunteered at Wartburg for 17 years.
Yes. And then, so Nana's done a lot, there. She also volunteered in Yonkers with my mother, preparing food for the homeless
Right.
and people that were in poverty in downtown Yonkers. So she did that as well. And I want people to know that there are wonderful art galleries here. You have the Blue Door Art Center. You have like a cafe like Manor Bagels. You have organizations like Yonkers Arts, Arts Westchester. You have Philip Manor Hall. You have YPI. You have the Warburton Gallery. Of course, you have the Yonkers Public Library, which I've always thought was amazing and had so much information for everybody and helpful people there that are at the library. You have the Hudson River Museum, and you have the Kiwanis Rotary Club. Like, there's so many different things to do in Yonkers. And I just hope that everybody continues to keep these programs and these organizations alive.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your message, and thanks so much for participating in this project. I'm very glad that you could join us. So thanks so much.
Thank you. I mean, I hope we gave you some little funny, juicy tidbits to add to what everybody else is saying.
Yeah, you gave me plenty. I appreciate it.
And we appreciate it too. And we